Hey everybody, welcome to this public conversation featuring me, Rishi, and Aerin Dunford here. We're actually going to just start with a little bit of grounding. I'm going to make space for us to be silent for a couple moments and then maybe some guided as well. If you don't know what grounding means, you could just feel yourself connecting to the earth through how you're seated or your feet and take a few breaths in silence. Aerin and I were imagining our relationship as though it's a river. So while you're here in this place, maybe you want to imagine your relationship with me or your relationship with Aerin as its own body of water or tributary, some kind of flow. And maybe you're watching this recording and you are encountering one or both of us at this moment. So it's the start of a new flow. Just imagining the rushing water, all the various events that have brought us together, maybe the movements and patterns that were bringing us together long before we ever met. Imagining the flow of this water further and further and further into the future, past the horizon.
Mm.
Then we can return to this moment. Those of us who are gathered here, myself and Aerin having a conversation. It's a summer Friday, but maybe for you it's a different time, a different place. We can just be here together for a moment. Thanks for joining me, Aerin.
Thank you.
Morning.
Good morning.
So let me ask what's here for you now.
Mm. I feel a little nervous, and I'm present to a sensation in my ribs that I associate with grief right now. And I think the nervousness is around like the intimacy of sort of, peeling back the outer layer of our relationship and sharing that with other people. And it feels tender and intimate um and beautiful. And I think the pain is kind of like this reminder of the grief and the gratitude that I feel around authentic, vulnerable, um, real relating, which is probably the thing that's most important to me in in my life. And so I'm also feeling like the preciousness of that before me. Yeah, right here, right here. What's present for you today, right now?
I feel like there are times when the person I'm relating to in the moment, it feels like it's the only thing happening ever,
Mm-hmm.
it's ever happened. And I definitely have felt that with you before. And there's something about inviting other people and making a recording and feeling that, oh, there's something like I feel very comfortable performing without being performative, like sharing myself on a stage. But there's something about this moment where I feel very small. Like I had my eyes closed and I imagined myself shrinking in my room, growing my desk and my plants and every on the pillows, like everything becoming huge. And I'm just this relationship of ours does not feel like the only thing in the world right now. It feels like one of many, many, many things. And that's just how it is for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's so much swirling and moving, and always, the flow of life is continuing and time. And I think that what I have learned from our relationship over these last couple of years is that even though it's not the only thing happening, it's something that I feel present, even if I'm not conscious or aware of it, that nourishes me, to know that it's possible to relate with someone as I feel we've been able to relate with each other is like a little source of nourishment, that is always there. So, and remembering that it's there, even in a subconscious way, is just enlivening. Like I feel my whole body tingle and come alive when I feel into knowing that that little, and it can be little, I don't think that this is about ego or grandstanding or trying to prove anything to anybody. It's really just like being who we are in our messiness and in our wholeness and in our brokenness. And then the other being that comes into existence in a real relationship, and that's something that is really important to me, that there's this we that is its own thing, and that we is the gift to me.
Yeah, I'm remembering how there have been moments where we have not been in contact, like just texting, like, oh, I'm too busy right now. Not usually not in that way, usually a little bit more tender, but like, yeah, here's what's going on. And like months, and sometimes we've been in conflict, and every time there's a part of the relationship that feels like Erin loves me. Like, even if there's also a part of the relationship that's like, we need to talk about some shit, there's also like, and that's, um, you shared with me earlier that that's a remarkable feeling. Like it's not like every relationship is like this. It's like a thing that we cultivated or that we were predisposed to for each other. And maybe that's like the starting point for us, like a topic as far as we have one,
Mm-hmm.
to engage with. What does it mean to relate that way?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I feel like in some ways I'm just like such a newbie to this way of relating too, and that's what makes it feel also alive, and I just feel so much gratitude for having the opportunity to practice being in relationship. And maybe I'll just share a little bit for me what that has looked like in our relationship over especially over these last few months. I think in the beginning we were still kind of like, dancing around each other and getting to know each other. But in the last, like I would say since March, there's just been a deepening. And one of the practices that has been really powerful for me, and it's interesting because a lot of this has happened over WhatsApp audio messages, and sometimes in a one-on-one way, and sometimes in a slightly larger group too. So that's a piece that feels interesting to be witnessed in the practice, feels like this, a little different than just the private conversation. So what I've been practicing, and I know that I've experienced this from you too, is like, if I am feeling a feeling about something that you said or did or something that occurred, um, I'm sharing that feeling in the moment. And a lot of times I have to say, I feel nervous about sharing this. I'm afraid it's going to impact you in this way, or you'll be angry or feel sad or disappointed by what I'm going to say right now, but I'm just going to name that. And then it's kind of like it opens the way for me to tell you what I'm feeling. And it's scary and it feels edgy and it doesn't feel like my habitual way of communicating or relating. Because as I was saying earlier, before we started recording, like a lot of times I will feel something about something that someone else did or said, or didn't do, or didn't say. And because I feel like I have to take on the responsibility of like shouldering the burden of not wanting to disappoint the other person or not wanting to impact them negatively, like I don't say anything in the moment, and I know that I can be an intense person. I can be a person who's very like demanding of myself, and then because of that, I can be demanding towards the world outside. And so there's this like clearing that happens when I'm able to say, I'm going to say this thing about how I'm feeling right now, and I feel nervous about it. And it's in the moment. There's something about that instantaneous, like not waiting so that it kind of collects this muck, and then it gets mixed with my own stuff. So that's been one piece that's been really, really powerful. And then there's another one, but we can talk about that more in a moment.
I'm just gonna take in the whole hearing you say all of that. The particular word that comes up for me is clearing. There's some
Hmm.
circles that I'm in where clearing is like done all the time, and sometimes clearing is like an excuse to vent. And it's like, oh, I want to clear something with you, and I'm just gonna say all this shit I'm mad about, and like, you know. But there's something about the way we do it. And I think there, yeah, I feel when you send me a voice memo and there's a moment of, we're in a moment of like negotiating something like that, I feel like I can just wait and just wait a week. I think I've waited a month before until I'm ready. And what I mean by ready is like, can I listen to this knowing that it's not always going to be about me? And can I hold a little bit of like I'm giving Erin the chance to say something that is not usually expressed so that we can have more flow in our relationship. I'm
Hmm.
not always good at it, actually. Sometimes I take it on and then I have to do some of my own work. Sometimes I think I wait too long because I'm, you know, a little bit scared. But the truth is that what I feel is that the things keep moving and things keep evolving. You had shared with me earlier, like intimacy being um, in part the willingness to be in the now and the willingness to acknowledge if I'm living in the past that that's the past and relate to it as though it's the past instead of making it the reality of what's happening right now. And that,
Hmm.
yeah, I think that contributes to the flow too.
Yeah, I feel like that was a big realization for me of like we all come from different pasts and family systems and entanglements of relationships that have, at least for me, like shaped the way that I relate. And so even this like shouldering more of the relational burden than probably is mine, I think comes from when I was a little girl with my family. And I think it's really important. I feel it's really important to recognize those patterns. But when we're in the now, then we get to not act from that kind of autopilot place where the the mechanisms that we have always used to continue to make ourselves feel safe no longer have to just come automatically. Like, we can work through some of that stuff, on our own and within ourselves and recognize those patterns and those tendencies. But then we get to choose to do something different, and I think that is magic. That's what I feel about this like freshness of the relationship that we have and the communication styles that we have. And the
That
other piece really quickly about what you just said is like, even if you take time, and usually you'll at least like you'll definitely acknowledge what I've said. Like, I know you're not going anywhere. I know that you're gonna respond at some point and you're gonna meet me with that same fierce honesty, fierce and tender and kind honesty that I've had to muster in order to be able to say the difficult thing that I have to say. So I know it's yeah, like you said, it's ongoing, you're gonna get back to me. You're not gonna ghost me.
Okay, I had a question I wanted to ask, but I also want to acknowledge the thing you just said about there being enough safety that this will be received with some amount of tenderness.
Hmm.
And that's an answer. It's in a way, it's an answer to my question. So my question was going to be, what is a defense mechanism that you might be aware of that you're either engaging in or putting aside? Um, I'll share mine because I have it.
Okay.
My defense mechanism is actually I get really soft and I become like, it's actually habituated for me to be like, it's okay, you can say whatever you want to me. It's gonna be fine. I'm here for everything. I'm here for all of the anger. I'm learning actually that for me to take a risk in a relationship is to say no more. I don't
Hmm.
want that anymore. And that's the risk. Um, it's kind of new. I actually don't know if I've shared that with you before, but it's the thing I'm learning today, or like in this moment, is like I don't want to stop being tender. I'm actually trying to find the middle ground. And I'm learning right now that to stay tender while also setting a boundary might look like saying like, I'm feeling hurt and my walls are up and I don't think I
Hmm.
can engage with you right now. Nobody, I feel like in the world, not nobody, but like a lot of people don't talk like that. And so I get a lot of heat sometimes. But or maybe I make an assumption that it's gonna bring on the heat, but it feels authentic and it feels like it's right in the it's like walking a tightrope, like honoring all my values at once.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I feel like you just shared with me about a situation where you kind of had to recognize like that some really hurtful things were said and that it didn't come from the entanglement or relationship you had with that person. So you could put a boundary there and recognize that it wasn't your stuff. But you also could be like, and this hurt me. And I mean, I think that's a really amazing capacity to be able to hold both of those things at the same time.
Yeah, it's new. I think
Mhm.
it's never like you said I'm finding new ways to relate or I'm relating. This is a new way, and I something tells me it's gonna be like that. Everything feels new forever as we grow our capacities and keep discovering new um, ways to be. But I also,
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know. I think there are moments where sometimes I get exhausted where I'm like I have to keep figuring it out, and that's also habituation is to be like a defense mechanism maybe is to say this is just um you're always going to have to work. Sometimes what I need is for a relationship to feel easy.
Mhm. Well, I'd say that's my defense mechanism. I feel like the one that's really present for me is the pattern I've already noticed and named here, which is like I just keep piling it on, like I just keep reinforcing the story that I have to do everything myself and I have to figure it out and I have to learn how to move forward despite all of this stuff. And not tell anybody about it. And that actually creates a lot of resentment. And so I think that's been something that I'm learning how to navigate. And the clearing is really helpful for that because then I'm not continuing to craft and weave and even like talk about some of these assumptions that I have about other people. So that for me is the big defense mechanism is just kind of like piling it on, keeping it to myself, but then this really ugly resentment pattern comes out. And I think that the defense mechanism, and maybe this is like something else we could talk about, I'd love to share. I was thinking about the clearing conversation that we did have after many months of knowing that it was something that had to happen. I have all this fear about disappointing people, right? I have this huge, deep terror that I'm going to let other people down. And there is a relationship between that and feeling let down and disappointed a lot of times because of my, partly because of my high standards and my big expectations. And so I really feel like um just being able to say, like, I'm afraid I'm going to disappoint you, Rishi, is so different and new for me. It's really, really eye-opening and heart-opening.
That was a fun conversation because I was also afraid of feeling that I would disappoint you, but I was also disappointed in you, and you
Hmm.
were also disappointed in me. And something about saying it, saying I'm disappointed, and then you being like I'm disappointed, and then we were both like, oh shit. And it was like so chill after. It's so relieving. And I don't think every clearing conversation feels better. Sometimes clearing conversations lead to more residue and more gunk, but there's
Yeah.
art of it that can lead to more space or more creativity or more expansiveness or more hope or whatever.
Yeah, I actually have been really noticing some patterns around how I work with these difficult conversations. And I have had experiences where I've done a conflict mediation or navigation process, and both of us ended up saying, like, the only thing that I can think of to do in this situation is to actually make myself smaller, and it just didn't feel good at all. It was like, oh, well, that's not something that I want to do. And I'm not in relationship with that person anymore. Um, and I'm also noticing a pattern. This is, I think, also related to what we did, is like to own the part that's mine, because there's always a part of it that's mine, right? There's never a time in a relationship where it's all the fault of one person. There's always an entanglement. So to own that and then to make requests, and there's like a balance and a sort of um an art to that, of like, yeah, I see that this is part of my pattern and this is something that I often do. And I'm sorry for that. And I would like to make this request of you that you, whatever it might be, as long as it's not kind of like, I want you to fundamentally change to meet ourselves and the other, how and where we are.
Hmm. I'm just gonna take a breath. I am wondering, does this feel like a good time to see if anyone else wants to jump in? We're
Yeah.
making the format up. I don't know what a public conversation is in this context. And so Erin and I agreed that at some point we would see if somebody wants to jump in and be part of this and share. It doesn't have to be for very long, but if you have something you want to say or something is coming up, maybe you could put your hand up and we'll just see. And if nobody does that, then we'll continue. Kate, yeah, come on in.
Hello, loves.
Hi.
This subject of friendship is really present for me currently. In fact, last night I was at a presentation um, by some guy who's one of these business gurus, and suddenly he's turned his attention to friendship. And it's in the sort of positive Tony Robbins, new age, beautiful people who are all between 30 and 40. It was that crowd, and it was at Tree People, which is, my beloved's organization, where we've had our own very difficult relationship in the last few years. And it was kind of an invitation that came to us to attend. And I was waiting for some sort of aha from this person. And just because he was on the stage and he was going to talk about friendship. And I just realized that I kind of knew most of what he was talking about, and that's because I've been swimming in this relational realm for so long. I think probably the only pertinent piece he said is that, if you have problems in a business relationship, then there are ways to deal with that. And if you have problems in a romantic relationship, you go to, a marriage counselor or a partnership counselor, and that there's not that for friendship. And then exploring all of the ways in which we engage or disengage, including, interestingly, being in each other's company and someone picks up a phone, and how that usually makes the other person pick up the phone, and then by the time you get back to it, it's kind of like a reset. So all the awkwardness of the few minutes when we begin, there's always some sort of, hi, how you doing? That gets reset every time the phone is picked up and then put down again. So in that sort of theoretical way, has been present for me. And personally, it's been present for me in that I'm noticing this swimming in the river of all my friendships, and a sense of uh, duty, perhaps, that I should reach out to people who I've not heard from in a while. And someone the other day said to me, there's this difference between, I should reach out, or I really want to reach out. And I suddenly had this burden lifted from me, realizing that I've had lots of lifetimes and friendships because I'm kind of, getting up there, and that a lot of that is not necessary. And I have this new gorgeous group of friends that I met maybe 6 years ago, but that has become more and more intimate and embedded, and that's really an important, intimate group of friends for me now that I didn't even know. And so I think my sense of having a duty towards friendships because they're long term, and that I have a sense of myself as being very loyal, that I will stick with you, you can call me anytime, all of that. And so, I have to almost reach out and tell those people that. And I'm going, they haven't reached out to me, so maybe they've also moved on. And that is really, really fine. Instead of, sorry, there's a message. Yeah, instead of just going, yeah, it's this is a river, and where those people have swum to the shore, or I've swum to the shore, and now I'm walking through the jungle.
Mm.
Um, Nothing in particular, but just that this is a very present conversation for me. And I'm
Mm.
loving being here with you.
Yeah, it's just
Kate.
good to have you, Kate. Stay unmuted. You're up here now. I mean, as long as you want to be. Um, can I ask you, since you mentioned you've been swimming in the waters of friendship and you're up there in terms of years, whatever that means. I just assume that there is some kind of maybe like a distillation or an essence of friendship that you want to share with us and everybody who's with us.
In terms of what it means, that's interesting. I had a very intense conversation with a neighbor recently, who called the day after we had all had dinner to let me know that I'd said some offensive stuff, or that she felt offended by it, or hurt, or teased, or whatever it was. And I went through a number of apologies. I went through, this is not an excuse, but I come from a culture where we do tease and we make fun, and that it's got me in trouble in this country before. All of that. Maybe can we have a coffee?
Mm.
To, you know, and I was told it was too soon. And where you were talking earlier about being kind of diminished and made small, I got off that call and I felt like I'd been vomited on, and that what I'd been accused of, I then received and experienced. And that was an example of, well, do I try anymore? And I just went, I don't need that feeling. I don't need that feeling in my life. Um, to to call someone and say, this is what's up for me, and to hear a whole lot of suggestions for reparation and apology. And it didn't end badly. It ended with, well, have a lovely day or something like that. But it was an ending for me. And so the group that I was just talking about, I was then in contact with a bunch of these people in the next 3 or 4 days. And it was the contrast that here is this group of people who have this generosity of spirit and generosity of, it's not necessarily time, but just openness and vulnerability for each other. Very, very different people. And seeing the stuckness of that other one, actually from a person who is, I will say, a woman of the cloth. And for people who have put themselves at that level, I do expect a little more uh maybe generosity, or a little more flexibility in relationship. And that was kind of super surprising to me. Um,
Can I
yeah.
ask? I'm just what I'm hearing in hearing you talk about this attempt at repair and it not being received and not going the way you'd hope, that there's some kind of need you're expressing that wasn't being met. And wondering what was that need?
Yeah, I think the need for my apology to be somehow accepted. Um, I, yeah, I think so. This is a neighbor. I'd prefer to have a really good, easy relationship with a neighbor than not. Sorry, missed that.
For harmony, maybe?
Yeah, some harmony, some ability to be able to interact easily. Um, and I expressed that. I said, what, I am so sorry. You know, why would I ever want to offend you? We're neighbors and we've been in each other's lives. Um, you're showing incredible bravery to call me. And I know you are a very brave person anyway. And she is. And still, it's something to call and speak about this. I mean, it became very intimate in that way. And I felt like I opened a lot of doors. And interestingly, because Aerin knows I'm a council person, interestingly, in this conversation, and she was, "Rah, rah, 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 rah," and I said, I just need to, and she said, I'm the one with the talking piece. And I went, wow, we didn't set those ground rules, but you're kind of using my practice also as a stick. And so then I did. I shut the front door until her talking piece was done. So yeah, it was yeah, and it stayed with me for a good 2 or 3 weeks.
Mm.
And eventually I had to come to, I've done what I can, and I'm dropping this, and we'll be polite, but there's no, probably not, maybe not on her part even a desire to get closer. Maybe because she is a person of the cloth, that she needs to keep herself separate from, I'm not her flock, and maybe even that. Uh, Actually, Andy, my husband, was saying, yeah, she's expecting a certain from you, and you don't give that to people who put themselves in authority. It's true, I don't. I don't. And that's why I'm a circle practitioner. There's nobody who is the guru. Run as
Mm.
far and as fast away from the guru as you possibly can. Yeah, that could be that.
Well, this really makes me think of something. Kate, I'm wondering if is it okay to go back to just me and Erin?
Absolutely.
Thanks for coming up. If you have more you want to say, just put your hand up.
Thanks, Kate.
I'm I'm wondering how you're going to feel about this, Aaron, but it's making me think about repair and what isn't the people, different people need different things for repair. And first of all, we're not even all talking about the same thing when we mean repair. Some people mean reparations. I think we don't even mean the same thing when we say the word reparations, but for some, it's like, I was hurt and you must do something for me. And for others,
Mm,
um, I like one of the ways I look at it is we both created a rupture. So I want both of us, like what you said earlier, I want both of us to see what we did to create it. And in both of those frames, actually, there's an expectation. Like there's an expectation, like, will you, it's actually not a request, it's often like, I cannot repair with you unless you see this the same way I do. And I'm normally like the one who's more like, oh, we can talk. I'm like what Kate was saying. I'm ready to talk, maybe ready to say sorry. And this week, the situation you alluded to earlier, where somebody was quite angry with me and saying hurtful things that I was very clear were not about me. Um, I wasn't ready, and they said sorry. They said sorry for the way I missed you, and I could feel that I was like, I don't think you know enough about how the hurt that I'm feeling for me to feel that you're sorry is about me and not about you just feeling regretful. Um, and so I needed more space. And I needed to say like, I'm not ready to receive the apology. And so I just think it's funny to hear your story, Kate, and to feel like, oh, I was on the other side of that one. Usually I'm not. Usually I'm the one saying like, hey, can we get when are we going to do the repair? And I was like, I still haven't reached out to this person. And I actually have a lot of confidence in us. I feel like at some point we'll both mutually feel ready. And Erin, yours and my sort of cosmic timing, letting ourselves weave in and out and taking months sometimes to get back to each other. No, never more than a month, and certainly never without communication. But just having the spaciousness to say, I'm not ready, has made a lot of has made a lot of things possible that might not have happened otherwise.
mm. Oh, my heart is going in so many different directions right now, having listened to Kate, and there's a lot of stuff that you said too. So let me see if I can kind of like bring it together.
Yeah.
I think that the thing that you shared, Kate, about like feeling obligated, to your relations is really something that I have a tendency to feel too. And it goes along with that like overburdening and that tendency for feeling like everything's on my shoulders. But I'm starting to like understand that obligation in a slightly different way, right? It's sort of like we already are all entangled. We already do, as Fred Moten would say, like owe each other everything. There's an indebtedness that we will never pay, and nothing that even if I'm the best friend in the world, it can't live up to the way that we're already entangled. So I've been thinking, reflecting a lot about how many people I know in the world, and like I could never tend to all those relationships in the way that might look like a good friend, from some kind of standard from Western modernity. But I can believe, I can have faith and trust that even just by remembering those people, if I never even reach out to them again, like they're in my heart, they're part of me. They make me actually. There's a Zapotec friend of ours who talks about how human beings actually knots in a net. And so what makes us up is the collection of little strings or threads that make up that knot. So we are each other. um, and I think that goes a little bit to what you were just speaking to with rupture, Rishi, and different ways of understanding repair, and reparations feels a little like a bigger box that's being opened. But I do. I mean, we're never going to understand each other perfectly, right? Because each of us have a different worldview and set of experiences. And so it goes to what we were speaking about a little bit before of like minding the gap, between what we would like to be, or how we would like the other person to be, or ourselves to be, and how it is. And I think as we were saying before, like tending to that gap and like letting that gap be a part of what's happening right now, and being in the present and in the now with it, instead of like obsessing about how it isn't the way that we want it to be, like with your neighbor, Kate allows for like more life to be in what's actually here, and honoring that gap, like with humility and with reverence almost. And for me, as someone who had an experience 3 years ago with someone who was part of my family by marriage, who basically, I mean, the experience that you just shared recently in your life, like imagine that on steroids, the most hurtful things in the world, and me having to recognize what was mine and what was not mine, and being able to like take the time, and I did take some time, like stepping back from all these hurtful messages that I got, and then being able to say, first of all, wow, it must have been so painful for you to carry all of these beliefs for so long, and it must feel good to release them and say them to me. And this part, I'll take on this. I recognize I can be demanding and I can be perfectionistic, and maybe I ask too much of you. But all of this other stuff that you have like tried to foist on me, that's not mine. And if you want to sit down and have a conversation about how to be in a different kind of relationship with me face to face, I'm willing to do that. And they said, I think the best thing for us is to be as far away from each other as possible. And then just having to honor that, like, okay. And we actually have come back into relationship in the last year. And it's not like the best, but at least we're not in that like very distant separation kind of state with a lot of animosity and resentment there. But it was a huge challenge for me to respond to that situation that way. And that's what I'm learning. Like, how do I step back? How do I see what's happening? How do I see what's mine? How do I see what's not mine? How do I put a limit and a boundary there when I see that it's not mine to carry? Um, and recognizing that like there's no ideal of repair either. Like relationships are messy. I sent you this photo the other day that I came up with this phrase like um that I thought of once upon a time when people talk about like wholeness, and I think this is related to the ideal of repair in a lot of ways too. But we're messy, and yeah, I had this phrase that was something about like we're all our own messes, creating an emerging whole mess, rather than wholeness. And I think that's part of it, is recognizing like we're not gonna, our ideals and our perfectionistic ideas about how relationship and repair looks probably don't meet up with the reality of how it's going to feel, but it can feel amazingly magical. And that's what I've experienced with you, with this sense of divine timing. Like, I know that we'll come together when the moment is right, and we'll have the repair that we need. And we can use tools to do that, which we did in our repair conversation. So, yeah, that's a little bit of all the places my heart was going just now after listening to you and Kate.
Thanks, Erin. I also had an experience a couple years ago of somebody very, very close to me. You know who it is. Bring a bunch of shit, a bunch of stuff that was like, you're selfish. This is who you are. This is how I feel about you. Also, I'm going to leave the relationship. And I was
Hmm.
so scared. I was so, and like I mentioned earlier, my habituation and my defense mechanism is to say, I'm sorry, let me make space for your feelings. And so instead of, um, I think in hindsight, I wish I had, instead of collapsing or fawning, I wish I had said, I'm really appreciating the importance of you sharing this. I can see that it's a big risk and it requires a lot of courage. I need time to digest, so I can actually take it in. And after digesting, maybe some of this I really want to work on so we can have a better relationship, and some of it I want to gently give back to you and let you say, like, I don't think it's for me. And um, I hope that's okay. And I think that actually I attribute me and this person ended up having a bigger rupture later, and we haven't spoken since. It's been a year and a half, and they were very, very close to me. Um,
Mm.
I attribute some of that later rupture to me not showing up with a little bit more like be engaging with the conversation in an authentic way because I was so scared of losing the relationship. I basically created it myself. Um,
Mm.
and that has been a consistent teacher for me. That moment and that relationship, even in its estrangement, continues to be one of my biggest teachers to learn how be to be involved in sometimes in a way that might disappoint the person I love or the person I want to love me. And I find that our experiments in divine timing, our experiments in saying it's going to be okay if I don't get a reply to this in whatever timeline, and to release that sort of, that's another figment of modernity. Oh, you're supposed to get back to me within whatever, like we used to write each other letters and we'd have to go through the post, over sea or whatever, and before that we didn't even have the technology that we take for granted, whatever, that's a whole rabbit hole. My point is, it's helping me encounter like a sense of trust with this person, like a year and a half of not being in contact. It's a blink of an eye in terms of a lifetime. And in that time, I think we are both getting ready. Um, we're getting ready to have the conversation we want to have. And I guess that makes me want to say to you, Kate, also, like, I don't know if it's over between you and your neighbor, and you don't have to be open while you're feeling hurt and while you're feeling that your needs aren't being met. And I see your hand, so I'm going to invite you back up here.
Yeah, I mean, I say it again, I've had a lot of years, and I lived with a person who was later, years and decades later, I realized was emotionally abusive in my early 20s. And recently, well, probably 3 years ago now, if I think about it, this person asked a mutual friend for my address. And that person, the mutual friend, said to me, and my whole body was like, because our last communication had been probably 15, 20 years ago. And it was one of those, yeah, everything, you, your mother, you're terrible, all of it. And I just wrote back and said, pretty much, have a lovely life. We clearly have different ideas about friendship and love. And so I thought about it and I said, okay. And I had this big expectation that this person who is now 80 either was about to die and wanted to do that thing, or was ready for an apology, ready to apologize to me for all the harm of a person 10 years older than an 18-year-old, which back in the day, people didn't go, ew, but we now do that. And I got the letter, and it was, I have no idea what you've been up to in the last, whatever, 40 years. And I'm going, okay, the internet, I'm not a wallflower. You can find me pretty easily. And then, a litany of everything from his life. And something about, and looking back on our relationship, you could say it was full of joy and this, but ultimately unsatisfying and out. And I had a friend who said to me, who's a film director, who said, whenever there's going to be a critique of something I've done, I always ask someone else to read it and curate it before I read it, so that he's a loving friend saying, yeah, this is going to help you, or and I did the same thing, and a friend read it and said, this is kind of boring, I don't know, I'll read it to you. And I just decided not to reply at all. And it was so hard for me not
Mhm.
to reply. So hard. And I wanted to say, this is what I expected. And I forgive you. I forgive you for all of the things that you can't apologize for. And then and my friend who knows a lot about narcissism said, don't even go there, because this person wants to just pull you back in, and then you'll be stuck again. So this idea, Aerin, your recent experience, it was very like that. But we're talking about over probably 50 years, not very much at all. And usually when it happens, it's been, you know,
Mhm.
that's it.
Well, And isn't it interesting that you were thinking that you wanted to forgive them for something that they actually aren't apologizing for and aren't asking for forgiveness for? You know what I mean? It's just fascinating to me.
Yeah, I wanted to go above it all and say, I hold no grudge against you for all the things that you did. Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to say sorry. That sucks.
Yeah, it does suck.
And yeah, you know, for whatever my word is worth, I feel that there's no you have there feels like there's no motivation or justification to offer this person forgiveness in this moment.
And I got to say, one of the best gifts ever from a friend was in that interim period where it was like, which was, what, 25 years ago, 30 years ago. I got the letter. I was so shell shocked. And I was at the local pool with my little one and my friend with her little one. And I said, hi, oh, wounds, bleeding, intestines, and she read it. And you know what she did? She went, up. It was such a gift to me. And I thought, oh, I'm so deep in this thing. And yet someone outside of that who loves me can look at it and go, oh, this is like piffle.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a friend.
Well, I want to, given where we are with time, I want to start to wrap things together. And I see a common thread between what all three of us have shared, which is noticing how we are conditioned to be when shit goes down.
Mm,
And
mm.
um, if we can notice that, we might be able to try something new. We might be able to say, I'm not going to do that thing again, right? Kate, you were like, I'm going to give this person leeway. I'm going to have an urge to try to wrap it up. And then with this neighbor, you're like, I'm not going to do that again. I'm good. So I want to acknowledge that. And I don't know. I want to move us towards some kind of closing. I don't know. Aerin, you want to take us home before we end the recording?
Well, I think I want to close just by saying like how surprisingly delighted I am by like the wide rangingness of this conversation. I didn't expect it to be so like I thought we would kind of focus more on your our relationship, Rishi. And I love it. I love that we're seeing the ecosystem, and it feels like that's something that's really powerful in terms of like just remembering that we're influenced, we're conditioned, we're shaped by the other relationships, the formative relationships. And that definitely is something, that we can look at from our present standing and look to the past, but we also can say like, and I'm not going to do that again. Or I'm going to experiment with just doing something slightly different, and I think that there's something that feels really alive in me. It's bubbling up. That's like, oh, what I want to be doing in my life, and I am doing it. And you, Rishi, and I, and others are experimenting with this. Like, I think our core value in this little group we have is like, real shit. Like, we're really going to talk about what we feel, and we have to have a good container. There has to be trust, and there has to be yeah, this kind of like intimacy that's built where we know we can share honestly, but we can also start to experiment with doing things in a different way than we've always been conditioned to do them. And I actually think that that is a very powerful practice for the times that we live in right now, even though it may feel like it's soft and it's not like um, you know, pounding the pavement and the activism and the trying to make a better world and be change makers and stuff, but like we are doing deep revolutionary work at this level. And I feel emotional, like overwhelmed by how significant and meaningful that feels to me.
Yeah.
So that's how I will close.
The one thing I want to say is, yeah, I think there can be something to take away around just noticing how we contribute to our own hurt. And that's like really delicate. And that doesn't mean that the other person didn't hurt us. It just means sometimes that we are part of it, and we're part of our own relationships, and we are entangled in it, and we are involved. And Yeah, I want to be choosing. I really want to be choosing. Okay, everybody. Thanks for coming. I'm going to end the recording now.